in our 4 Bodhisattva vows, the way we chant them here at the Great Mountain Zen Center, the second one is Inexhaustible Delusions I vow to dissolve. So tonight we're going to explore this idea of delusion. What is exactly a delusion? And we're going to look at it from a lot of different angles. So first, let's look at the conventional understanding. So I looked up on Google, and the Google definition of delusion is an idiosyncratic belief or impression that is firmly maintained despite being contradicted by what is generally accepted as reality or rational argument, typically a symptom of a mental disorder. So some of the key points is a belief, so there's a belief, maintained despite contradiction, and contradicted by generally accepted as reality. So in other words, what might be called a consensual reality or a conventional reality, so not necessarily reality itself. And then actually in the field of psychology, we actually have a whole disorder that people can be diagnosed with. It is called delusional disorder. And so I'll read a little bit about what WebMD says about a delusional disorder. Delusional disorder is a type of serious mental illness called a psychotic disorder. People who have it can't tell what's real from what is imagined. Delusions are the main symptom of delusional disorder. They're unshakable beliefs in something that isn't true or based on reality. But that doesn't mean they're completely unrealistic. Delusional disorder involves delusions that aren't bizarre, having to do with situations that could happen in real life, like being followed, poisoned, deceived, it's conspired against, or loved from a distance. These delusions usually involve mistaken perceptions or experiences, but in reality, the situations are either not true at all or highly exaggerated. People with delusional disorder often can continue to socialize and function normally apart from the subject of their delusion, and generally do not behave in an obviously odd or bizarre manner. But in some cases, people with delusional disorder might become so preoccupied with their delusions that their lives are disrupted. Delusional disorder most often happens in middle to late life and is slightly more common in women than in men. So I want to give you a few more conventional definitions, and then we will get into the Buddhist view of delusion. So here's a few more definitions and ideas. Fantasy. So here's the definition of fantasy. The faculty or activity of imagining things, especially things that are impossible or improbable. Here's the definition of a dream. Now, the primary definition of a dream includes thoughts and images that happen during sleep, but there's other definitions of a dream as well. So a dream can be a cherished aspiration, ambition, or ideal, an unrealistic or self-deluding fantasy, a person or thing perceived as wonderful or perfect. And then here's some synonyms for delusion: misperception, illusion, misbelief, misconception, misunderstanding, and error. So now let's look at Buddhism. So from the Buddhist point of view, at least as I understand it, because I can't speak for all of Buddhism, but as I understand it, we all are actually diagnosed with a delusional disorder. We are all having misperceptions. We're all living in a dream. We all have misbeliefs, misconceptions, misunderstandings, and we have cognitive and perceptual errors, which cause us suffering, and which cause suffering to others around us. So, inexhaustible delusions I vow to dissolve. Inexhaustible means they never end. So as soon as one is dissolved, there's another one right there. As soon as that one's dissolved, there's another one. Another one is dissolved, there's another one. So that would mean, in theory, that right now, each of us is functioning under some kind of delusion, right now in this moment. Some aspect of our perception is not completely accurate to reality. Do you believe that? Could that be true? So here's a line from Trust in Heart Mind, Faith in Mind. Delusion spawns dualities. These dreams are not but flowers of air. Why work so hard at grasping them? How much of our day is spent not in duality? How much of our day is spent in complete unity, where the self is dissolved, the sense of separation is completely dissolved? Is there such thing as a thought that is non-dual? And then we have the three poisons, which is one of the aspects of the cause of suffering, the second noble truth. So often we hear greed, hatred, and ignorance in the Zen tradition, but other traditions use different language, and I like the other language a little better. I think it's more inclusive and broad and actually points more directly to things. So clinging, aversion, and delusion. Delusion being the same as the ignorance. So the three poisons include delusion. Delusion being one of the causes of our suffering. So when we see and experience reality inaccurately with misperception, that is a source of our suffering, of our insatiability, our discontent. So continuing on with the Buddhist context of delusion. In right view, in the Noble Eightfold Path, right view points to two things. Most obviously, it points to having an accurate view of the path that leads to the end of suffering. But it also points to having an accurate view of reality, which is really the same thing. But yes, a right view or accurate view or appropriate view or skillful view, a view that is as close to reality as we can get. So this begs the question, what is inaccurate about our views of reality? So if I say that we're all functioning under some kind of delusion right now, or multiple delusions, what are they? So in the three marks of existence, impermanence, no self, and insatiability or discontent or suffering, we have impermanence. So the Buddha said that we chant the verse of impermanence here once a week at the Abbey, and the Roshis had us doing that during at least, I think, during a week-long session a few years ago. We forget that everything is impermanent, that our self is actually, our body, who we are is actually reborn every moment, and actually many, many times within a second. But we have some experience of continuity, which gives us a sense of permanence, which then gives us a sense of attachment to this idea of me and other. We also hold on to life. I definitely hold on to life. I love living. I really enjoy it. And I'm really, really sad when I think about the day that it will come to an end. So I just feel that sadness. And no self. So I talked about that a little bit, with this idea of a me. And actually, I think I want to do a future talk on what exactly is this thing that's a self, which I typically use the phrase self-agenda To me, the self is an agenda. It's a sense of anxiety that rests in the unconscious, that is full of our beliefs and our agendas and our need to be something that we're not, something more than what we are. And then the insatiability. So another one of the three marks that we think that once we get this thing, then we'll be happy. And then we get this other thing, then we'll be happy. And we get this other thing, then we'll be happy. And at some point, if I get all these things, then everything's gonna be okay. And so we keep chasing after things instead of just experiencing our dissatisfaction and just being with that. Also, we have an inaccurate view of separation. So we have what's called codependent arising, and Thich Nhat Hanh calls it interbeing. So this interbeing, unity, oneness, this is hard to live from. This is hard. We get moments of it, but it's hard to completely live from that place of no place. And then thoughts and beliefs. In Zazen, we train our minds to let go of thoughts and beliefs over and over and over and over again for hours and hours over decades of practice. We know as Zen practitioners that thoughts and beliefs, or at least attaching to them and believing them, is a source of suffering, a source of separation, is the source of ego and self, the false ego, the false self. And so we practice and we retrain our minds to have a very different relationship with thoughts and beliefs. So here's another line from the Trust and Heart Mind about beliefs. If you would clearly see the truth, discard opinions pro and con. Do you do that? Do we do that? You notice when you have opinions? Which ones are worth holding on to? Are any of them worth holding on to? Are they helpful? Do we need them? I do. I give my clients opinions all the time. But when I give them to them, there's usually some sense of maybe in it. There's some space for that to be wrong a little bit. And I try to make that very clear to my clients. Hey, this is what I see. Maybe. Thoughts from the Trust and Heart Mind. But live in bondage to your thoughts and you will be confused, unclear. So we're going to have thoughts. Yes, of course, there are awakening experiences where the mind completely empties and there's nothing left. But thoughts come back, at least in my experience. But can I let them go? Do I need to pay a whole lot of attention to them? Are they actually even useful? So then a couple more things here. I'm going to talk about ultimate and conventional reality. Ultimate reality, which we often hear of as the absolute in Zen. Well, in this place, there is no delusion. Delusion doesn't even exist. Neither does suffering. These are just concepts. Delusion itself is a delusion. The idea that delusion exists is a delusion. Things are neither perfect as they are or imperfect. We like to say, oh, in the absolute, things are perfect as they are. Not true. That would not be the absolute. That's still an idea. That's still a concept. It's still a belief. So in Zen, we say things are as they are. There's only just this. Here we are in thusness. These are the words that we have that most closely point to this place of no place, this empty, spacious, full, non-dual, inexpressible, because all words are dualistic, inexpressible via words. And yet words are part of it. They're not separate. We also have koans that point to this. Gute's one finger, the shit stick, and so many more. So with an empty mind of thought and belief, or a mind trained not to pay much attention to thought and belief, a person experiences a moment without the goggles of a dream, without the goggles of fantasy, without the goggles of misperception pulled over their eyes. So this experience of Kensho, this experience of Satori, these moments of mindfulness we have when we're washing dishes, and for this split second, the mind does completely become congruent and align with the direct experience of our life, untainted by our beliefs and our thoughts and our dreams and our fantasies and our delusions and our opinions and the things we want and the shoulds and the shouldn'ts and the could-have-beens and all of that stuff that's just extra. So in conventional reality, you could say each person is their own circle, and there's millions and millions of circles. And then where they all collide or where they all overlap, right there in the middle, is what's called consensual reality. Not just conventional reality, but consensual reality. It's where most of the people, or everybody to some degree, believes that the sky is blue, the earth is round, you know, there's a universe, things like this. Which doesn't make it real. It just means that there's that many people who agree on the same thing, which we all know, that just because a bunch of people agree on it doesn't mean it's true or real. So in this relative reality, we suffer as a result of our delusions. We see things not as they are, but we believe them to be that they are. Our reality is tainted by our conditioned perceptions, our beliefs, our idealism. And like I said before, our shoulds, our could-have-beens, our imaginations for things to be different than they are. And all the ways we try to manipulate reality to make us feel better inside our bodies. And if you haven't understood yet that every action that we do has an intention to seek happiness and avoid pain, then I encourage you to look more deeply at this. Every single action we do, we are seeking a pleasant experience and avoiding a painful one. Even when we engage in a painful experience, there's some hope that we're going to get a pleasurable experience out of that. And this is evolutionary, this is biological. It can't be beat. And it's why we come to Zen practice, because we are looking for a more pleasurable experience on this planet and one of less suffering. The unfortunate reality is that we're taught in our culture and by our parents, and we learn that pleasure can be found in a lot of things that end up having negative karmic consequences, like substances, overspending, misusing sexuality, all these kinds of things. They feel good in the moment, and then later they bring us negative karmic consequences as well as to others. In the relative world, we believe in the duality of problems and perfections. Is there a problem in the world right now? Are these troubling times? Dogen said, those who have great realization of delusion are Buddhas. Those who are greatly deluded about realization are sentient beings. So delusion continues. Could it be that great realization of delusion is not necessarily that the delusion or the dream of reality goes completely away, but simply that it is experienced on such a visceral level that the dream is seen for what it is, that the awakened person then simply does not take the dream so seriously anymore, that everything is experienced with a more empty mind and open heart, and more directly through the body. So there's a feeling of troubling times, and there's a belief of troubling times. Those are two very different things. So what is the feeling that's happening right now for a lot of people in this world, in this country? Does it need to become a belief? Does it need to be a banner slogan? I'm not saying it does or it doesn't. I'm just challenging consensual reality. Not knowing, once this dream, this pervasive human delusion is seen for what it is, we realize that we really don't know much of anything. Only our relative perceptions of things. And even those are filled with misperceptions. In shattering the dream, I have learned recently that other forms of Buddhism teach that and train their students to see life as an illusion, as a dream. This clearly works for many people. In Zen, we don't approach the dream in this way. For us, this would be like adding another pair of goggles on over the ones we already have. We sit and take our Zazen practice into every aspect of our life in order to experience every detail as free from thought and belief as possible, to have direct experience through our hands, through our eyes, through our nose, our tongue, and our ears, the five senses. We retrain our minds and our bodies to work in sync and to experience life directly without the overlay of mental formations, which is one of the five skandhas. Eventually, the mind makes sudden shifts that continue to unfold over time, and the initial delusion of mental formations are dropped away. Mountains are mountains, and rivers are rivers. Chopping wood is just chopping wood. Carrying water is just carrying water. Racism is just racism, and it hurts. And I want to do something about it. But it's my body wants to move, not my mind. The mind is still. And the body loves and wants to stand up and do something. In awakening, the delusion that remains depends on the specific awakened person's depth of transformation and the depth of their preconditioning. So in that split second when that pebble hits the bamboo, the mind empties and there's nothing left but direct, pure awareness. But eventually thoughts come back, beliefs come back, the body has habituated, conditioned responses to things. It has neural pathways that were set up in childhood. So you still have a Zen master who has this kind of issue and that kind of issue. Maybe they have an anger problem, or maybe they are obsessive compulsive, or maybe they feel anxiety. Maybe they still feel hurt when someone doesn't like their talk. So the delusion within the delusion, the dream within the dream, in awakening the original dream, the delusion is dropped. But within that, there's a whole nother layer of dream and delusion. So enlightenment, awakening, is not some place where we completely see reality from completely untainted perspective. It means there's just more awareness of not knowing, and that the delusion is inescapable, it's inexhaustible. But from my personal experience, the more closely my perceptions are to reality, the less I suffer. The less beliefs and ideas there are floating around in my head, and the less I take anything that's happening up there very seriously, the less I suffer, the happier I am. So I just want to finish with the often quoted saying from the Diamond Sutra. So you should view this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream.